The real estate market's always good for somebody. As a real estate professional, it's our job to identify whom the market is good for. You're going to go through your shit storms. You're going to have war. You're going to have battle. You're going to have, right? Like you need to be prepared for it. You need to set realistic expectations, but then having that identity that, hey, I'm prepared for battle. I'm going to push through battle. You got to have extreme clarity on what you want, why you want it, why it's important to you. So what you want is the target. That's the goal. But why you want it, why it's important to you is the reason, the purpose for that goal. And it's got to be deep, man. You got to get, extreme clarity on this.
We know all real estate agents want to acquire clients consistently so that they can grow their business and income for that great lifestyle. This broadcast brings you the best and top people in the industry to support that quest. This is Dave Fanale, and I'm here to bring you the Real Estate Skill Builder broadcast, Real Estate Talk TGIF, brought to you by Real Estate Skill Builder and Align, your premier real estate solution. Again, welcome everybody. Dave Fanale here, Real Estate Talk TGIF, episode 370. I want everybody to get ready and to buckle up because today I got one of my all-time favorite people on. Joshua, you're your coach, your mentor, your team leader. If you're not doing those anymore, you wear that. You're the real deal when it comes to real estate and hard work with the ups and downs. All different kinds of things. I mean, you live the GSD mode. It is get shit done. And I believe I may have thought about it. And then I found you. This is so many years ago. And it was just, okay, so now he's got it. I can't do it. So I got to figure something else out. But you know what? You are the man of hustle. You are, there's a lot of truth coming out of what you say all the time. Your coaching is amazing. You inspire a lot of people. And you shifted from, you've done well, you've done poorly, you've lost, you've won, you've had bouts with different things, and you've even taken time off, man. Thank you so much for being on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, again, it's a massive honor. And to your point, because I know it's like comparison is an ugly thing. Yeah, there's a healthy level of comparison when we're, learning from what other people, are doing, but then there's a negative component of it too when we're, you go on social media and you see everything everybody's doing. It looks like they're living these epic lives, and that could be a negative component to that too. And, but I always like to be as transparent as I possibly can. Cause when people look at, oh, Josh, you've sold over 7,000 homes between yourself and your team, and you've had all these, accolades. And I'm like, look, man, I've been kicked in the teeth and beat down more than I've won, right? Like I've been one of these guys where it's like, how they say like, oh, don't touch the stove. It's hot. Well, then you got to touch it. Well, I'm the guy that I got to touch it, and then I got to touch it a couple more times before I learn my lesson. So I've made it, I've lost it, I've made it, I've lost it, So I've had the ups and downs from a business aspect, but then also personal, right? I don't think it's a thing that's talked about enough, but been massively depressed. I've had a massive battle with alcoholism, which I'm 5 years sober now. I was morbidly obese, had to lose over 100 pounds. So So when I talk about get shit done, I don't want anybody to think like I got my, shit together. I've actually never met a human being that actually has their shit together, right? If they say they do, I think that they're lying, right? It's just a constant improvement of, hey, look, I'm just trying to be a better man this year than I was last year in all the aspects of my life that are important to me. I don't believe in perfectionism. I think it's a hologram that doesn't exist, but I'm just striving to, get better and metamorphosize into the man that I know I'm capable of becoming.
That's really a gist of your story. Is there, we all start somewhere. We all lose. A lot of us, when we lose, we make mistakes. And you talked a little bit about that. Go a little bit deeper into your journey and how you started and how you got to where you are now. You've transitioned to a lot of different things now.
Yeah. So, it all started in my early 20s. I dropped out of college. I didn't really know. I was kind of lost. But, it's different now today. I think people have a different perspective of college, but I'm a little bit older. So, when it was like, dude, I came from a really small town, and it was like, you either go to college or you're going to become a loser. So I kind of felt pressure to go. But I ended up dropping out like 18 months into that journey. And then I had, a lot of negative hate, from, like negative support from friends, family, going through that journey. And I've been a guy that's just battled with depression, and it runs with certain family members of mine too. And, so my early 20s, man, I became massively depressed, to the point where I'm having consistent daily suicidal thoughts. My low moment was, I planned out my suicide. I was getting ready to execute on it. And I just heard this loud internal voice, whether you're a believer like myself, or not. So we want to call it God or the universe. was just this loud internal voice that was like, hey, Josh, before you execute on this, like, let's just try a different path. Cause I never, at that point, never like really took responsibility, never went out there and actually tried something different. I allowed myself to adopt a victim mindset, just blaming, the whole world for how shitty my life was. And to be honest with you, it just scared the living hell out of me that allowed myself to get to that level. So then I started looking at, I'm like, okay, I want to solve this and solve this for good. So what's the opposite of depression? Well, it's fulfillment. So then I started looking at, I'm like, what would make me fulfilled? And I had no idea, but then I identified, okay, what are 2 areas of my life that I'm extremely unhappy with, that I'm most unhappy with? I think if I could solve these, that would at least put me on a better path. So at that point, I was morbidly obese, 276 pounds. I'm only 5'10". So, so I'm like, okay, if I get my health together, because like growing up, like, dude, I was, athletic. I competed in bodybuilding, teenage Mr. Michigan in high school. Like I went from being in great shape to becoming morbidly obese, and I hated it. Right. So I was like, okay, if I get in great shape, then I was also sick and tired of being broke. I was working at a hospital as a nurse's aide, making $10 an hour. And, it's like I had like 3 weeks of income, but that 4th week, like I had never had enough money to get through the whole month, and I always had to scrape and, live in my car and, all of this stuff. So I'm like, okay, if I can solve my financial issues, and then if I can solve my health issues. So I just went to work at those 2 things. And that led me from in the hospitals to getting into sales. A year later led to me getting into real estate, and then working on the health at the same time. And, because I get asked quite often of like, hey, Josh, like, how did you do so many, did 48 deals my first year? And I'm like, it was a combination of 2 things. Number one, I realized I was not smart enough to figure this stuff out. That's one thing that, like, I think one of my strengths has been just understanding that, like, dude, I don't know crap, right? So I never allow myself to develop an ego. I shouldn't say that. I've had times where my head's gotten, bigger than it should have been. But I was like, okay, I need to find and align myself with the right mentor. So unlike so many new agents that are so concerned about splits, fees, like I didn't care. I'm like, I need to find the biggest badass I possibly can, go work for him at his brokerage, or I could be mentored, but then from there too, that's not enough. It's like, okay, yeah, I had the blueprint to execute on that eliminated the guesswork for my mentor, who was one of the top team leaders in the country and owned his own brokerage too. But then I'm like, I was so sick and tired of being a loser, feeling like a loser. I was so ready to turn my life around where I was willing to do whatever it took. So that's what just kind of set the real estate, on fire. Right. So 40 deals my first year, 103 my second, led to me starting my team, then, spent 19 years building a team, built the 30 top team in the country, with over 7,000 homes sold. And then, I got involved in a nationwide franchising company where I was a minority owner. We built that up to 105 locations. And, so I've kind of done all the different aspects, individual agent, team leader, the brokerage side, franchising side, and learned a lot. But it's been a lot of, we don't learn from our successes, man. We learn from our failures, right?
Yeah, and that's where the learning gets and the breakthroughs come from. So one of the things I want to hit upon, because a lot of people have this victim mindset. You mentioned that, right? The victim mindset. Oh shit, nothing's going to go right for me. I can't seem to do this. The negative self-talk, et cetera, that kind of shit. So when you go through the victim mindset and you get out of that, and then from depression, there's fulfillment. But I want to talk about something you didn't talk about. I want to talk about between depression and fulfillment. When you realize you're depressed and you can get out of it, a victim mindset, let's call it there. What happens through that middle? Okay, so let me give you the example, Joshua, because you're really going to understand this question. You say you understand what your mindset is, you understand what your issue is, you understand why you feel the way you do, and you got to get through it, and you want to be able to make those calls and to go out on those appointments, et cetera, in order for you to get to the fulfillment. But there's still that middle. Some people call it the messy middle. Some call it the valley of despair. Whatever you want to call it, you realize something. You got to hold it a mindset, the negative mindset, the victim mindset, into the depression. You want to come out of it. And to get the fulfillment, there's that middle. Do you know what I'm talking about? Does that make sense to you? Did that question?
Yeah. I mean, the messy middle. And look, one thing that I've learned from creating, success in business, but also creating success and, overcoming alcoholism and, other substance addiction. And, when I started studying addiction and those that had long-term success with, not just with overcoming it, but like overcoming it for a lifetime. The one commonality that everybody I ever studied had was they had an extreme clear purpose, an extreme clear reason as to why they needed to quit, why they needed to create the success with whatever they're doing. I found that same to be true for real estate. A lot of people are like, well, Josh, I'm not an addict like you were or whatever. I'm like, dude, the biggest addiction that people struggle with today is the addiction to comfort. They're so addicted to their comfort zone. Yeah. Right. So we've got to be able to break these addictions. But the only way that I found is you got to have extreme clarity on what you want, why you want it, why it's important to you. So what you want is the target. That's the goal. But why you want it, why it's important to you is the reason, the purpose for that goal. And it's got to be deep, man. You got to get, extreme clarity on this. And more people today spend more time designing Christmas or vacation than they ever do their life plan. So no wonder 99% of people get to the end of this life and have this massive shoulda, woulda, coulda, regret list, because they just don't spend enough time with it. So I would say the first step is to spend that time in solitude, getting extreme clarity on what is it you truly want. Now, there also is this big disparity between fulfillment and happiness. I talk to so many people like, oh, dude, I just want to be happy. And I'm like, okay, that is a terrible goal. I get what they're saying from somebody that was massively depressed. I get what they're saying, but happiness is an emotion. Well, as human beings, we have 8 different emotions that we experience, 8 core emotions. So if you're a healthy, regulated, emotional human being, you're going to experience happiness an 1/8 of the time. Happiness only exists because we also experience sadness. So when I say fulfillment, I'm not saying that like, okay, every day I'm just happy and I'm on fire and I'm motivated. Look, more days than not, I'm not motivated to do a damn thing. I don't want to get up. I don't want to do this stuff, but I push through regardless. It's that understanding that commitment and success is only reserved for those that are truly committed. And commitment is doing the necessary actions that you must do regardless of your emotional state. So how you push through that messy middle is you stay extremely clear on what you want. Now, this might sound woo-woo, but I'm a big believer in vision boards. And the reason why I'm a big believer in them is out of sight, out of mind. Like I want to keep this stuff in front of my mind all day, every day. Like I have my vision board, just to the left of my computer here. So I see it all throughout the day, every day. So it reminds me of why I'm pushing through the pain, why I'm pushing through all the things I got to push through. And that's how we get through the messy middle. Because everybody's going to go through. I look at, life, business. I know we're on a real estate podcast just so we can talk about business, but life is going to happen to do this too, right? Like you're going to have intense, insane pressure applied to you. So I look at this of, okay, just imagine that we're all pieces of coal. Well, when pressure is applied to coal, 2 things happen. Either number 1, it crumbles, or number 2, they handle the pressure extremely well and become a diamond. But just a small, tiny fraction becomes that diamond. So then it's an identity thing of, okay, I'm truly committed, and whatever pressure that I'm going to experience, I'm committed to becoming a diamond. So I'm not going to let any of this pressure break me. I'm going to push through, no matter what. But staying focused on like why you're doing this in the first place. Right. And then this is where like you always hear the, good is the worst enemy to greatness. Because in the beginning, when I was broke as a joke, that was the easiest time. To push through. But then when you start getting comfortable, you start making 30, 40, 50 grand a month. Well, now it's easy to start getting comfortable and then not continue to pursue your goals. That was the harder part, right. Of, breaking through that and not allowing myself to get comfort and making sure that the mission was always more important than the money, because to me, it's not about the money. It's about proving to myself, like, and this might sound weird to others. Like I don't have some monumental, insane why like Elon Musk where hey, I need to revolutionize interstellar space travel to save the human species. Like that's awesome. For me, mine's very simple. I want to look in the mirror and be proud of the person that I see. And I still have a long way to go. So that's how I found to push that messy middle, because it's going to happen to all of us. And I think setting realistic expectations, right? Like, dude, like you're going to go, I've yet to meet anybody that's created success in any aspect of their life that hasn't went through insane personal shitstorms. Like you're going to go through your shitstorms. You're going to have war. You're going to have battle. You're going to have, right? Like you need to be prepared for it. You need to set realistic expectations, but then having that identity that, hey, I'm prepared for battle. I'm going to push through battle. No matter, look, maybe you have to file bankruptcy. Maybe, like, dude, like I said, I've made it. I've lost it. Not only have I lost it, I've been hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in credit card debt and other, but it's like, I've never lost sight of that goal. And that's what keeps me pushing, 20 years into it. Cause I get asked this question all the time of, dude, you've been doing this 20 years. You still go out there and grind, 12 hours a day, 40, whatever. Like you have more energy and passion 20 years into this game when most people burn out. Like burnout only exists, at least in my experience, when we don't have extreme clarity on what it is that we actually want and what we're fighting for.
That's That answers my question. So, all right, man. So that's really important because a lot of people, no matter what stage of business, life, whatever they're in, it doesn't have to be real estate. They all need to see that. And I asked the journey question every broadcast, and because it's so important for people to realize, I do a great intro. I try to make my intros personal, and it's all about that person that comes on this broadcast. And I believe everybody has a right to, not a right, but everybody should know, hey, you know what? This is all roses and sunshine. There's bad times. There's times that happen that we all go through and we figure out how to get there. And that's why we're still here. Right. But having extreme clarity for what we know is there is important. For me, I've been around a long time, and I keep going, and I'm sometimes I'm not sure why. Sometimes I'm not sure. I ask myself some questions every now and then. Why do I do this? Why am I still doing this? Do I still want to do this? And the answer always comes back to I know the why, and the answer is yes. I still want to do it because it doesn't matter how old I am or where I'm getting it, because I am the old guy in the room now, where before I was the young buck in the room, and I've come from that stage to this stage, and it's like. Doubt creeps in people's minds like crazy. And doubt is, it's not your friend sometimes. It will help you along. It will guide you along sometimes, but it's not your friend sometimes. But we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about you with me. So your business went through a lot of transitions. You did a lot of business. You built a lot of things. And now your goal, the way I look at it, with what you've done is to help people. But you've also stopped for a while. You also recharged for a while a couple of years ago, and you're doing a podcast and you're doing coaching, and you had these products and you had that franchise system. What goes on in, when you make it? I mean, we talk about clarity. So let's talk about clarity, right? You took some time off. You recharged. You stopped doing stuff for a while. Tell me about that time and how that helped you move forward to get more clarity.
Yeah, so I didn't stop for a recharge. It was actually one of the hardest things I've ever done. I forced myself to take about 8 months off. And when I say that, like I was doing the minimum, working a few hours a week. Now I wouldn't recommend that for, like I have a great team. I've got great people in place. So, I built my real estate team up to a point, because that was always my vision with is I want to build a business where I could disappear for 2 years and things are still growing and operating without my involvement. And so it wasn't like I just pieced out completely, but, I was just doing the bare minimum, but the reason why I did that was I just turned 40 and I was like, hey, all I've ever done is at least for my adult life was essentially real estate. So I'm like, okay, I'm kind of through that mid-year of life, hopefully I live longer than 80, but if we just look at the stats, that's about mid-year life for the average American. So then I was like, hey, man, I just need to lower the pressure, lower the noise so I can really be with my thoughts and get extreme clarity on like, is this what I truly want to do for the rest of my life? Because one thing I didn't share earlier is when I was a nurse's aide, working at the hospital, I worked on the hospice floor. And, I did that for like 2 years. And, for those that don't know hospice, in the hospital, it's called Heaven's Waiting Room. It's where people essentially go to expire. My job was just to keep the patients comfortable. So I'd work 12-hour shifts, just hanging out with patients and having in-depth conversations with them. And one thing that stuck out to me always from that journey was not one patient ever that I had a conversation with was like, dude, Josh, life was amazing. Life was epic. I'm ready for the next journey, whatever that journey is. Every single one of them had a shoulda, woulda, coulda, regret list. So I call it the ultimate scoreboard, right? So like so many people, so when we talk about clarity, the ultimate scoreboard is, okay, I fast forward, visualize myself. I'm 84 years old. I'm on my deathbed. There's no time to go back and change anything. What must happen with this one gift called life that God has blessed me with, where I can leave this life with knowing that I did everything I possibly could to go out there and create an epic life. I don't want to have that shoulda, woulda, coulda, regret list, so I took that time to just quiet the noise, slow down so I could get clarity on, hey, is this really what I want to do? Or because I had some passions about other industries, other businesses, other things. So I just took that time to really kind of self-discover what I wanted to do. But what was interesting about it is it brought me back to the clarity that, hey, I'm in the right place. And this is exactly what I want to be doing for the rest of my life. Going through that discovery process. So The original plan was to take 12 months, couldn't make it 12 months, but I had the clarity that I needed within 8, and then back full force after that.
So you come back full force after that. You've done a lot of different things since then. Talk to me about the changes you made after that time.
Yeah. So then it was, okay, I just really had to start, breaking down, okay, like what is it that I love about real estate? And look, there was a point in time in my career where I loved working with buyers. And then all of a sudden one day you wake up and you're like, okay, I don't enjoy this anymore. Then there's a time where you love working with sellers. Then you're like, okay, I don't enjoy this anymore. The thing that I've never got tired of, that I'm obsessed with, is supporting and helping, other real estate agents, team leaders, go out there and grow and expand their business. And I know it's just a different level of impact. And it's, to me, it's like the most powerful drug on the planet, right? It's, so that's the part of the industry that I love the most. But part of that clarity process was realizing that, like, look, how I built my real estate business, a very small percentage of my time was allocated to that. So much of the time was spent on freaking accounting and managing, staff and legalities. And so I'm like, hey man, I need to identify a better path, a better vehicle where I can just plug into what I want to do. And that's what led me to, the great company that you and I are at, EXP, where I shut everything down, moved over here. Cause I'm like, I can leverage all their staff, leverage all their support, leverage all their systems, let them have all the headaches. Now I get to do what I love doing most, which is whether it be selling real estate, producing a team, but then just pouring into our agents from a coaching and supporting standpoint. So, it really allowed me to get the clarity, not just that real estate was the right vehicle, but what do I want to do in real estate? What do I love about it? What am I most passionate about? Like, I know it's a cliche saying, but it's like, okay, if you go win the Powerball tomorrow, what would you still do? Like, if money was not an issue, like what would you do? And what would you do for free? And I'm like, dude, like I'd go out there and, podcast, speak, coach, train, right? Like, right. And that's just what I love doing most. It never feels like work. So like yesterday, man, I was in this seat yesterday was kind of a fluke day. I had to get up at 3 because I had some early morning stuff going on with some people in the East Coast. But man, I was like, going from 3 a.m. till 7 p.m. yesterday, but none of that felt like work, man. I mean, it was just like, I love every second of it. So, it was okay. Real estate's the right vehicle, but what do I love most about it? And let me then position myself in the right vehicle that allows me to focus on the things that I'm best at and that I love doing the most.
So, okay, great. So I want to transition that, because that's really a great thing to focus on with agents, whether you're a producing agent, a new agent, or you're doing 30, 40, 50, $60 million a year. It's focusing on what you like to do more. And when you get in this business, look, one of the things we've said an awful lot over the past year, at least with my teams, we know that this is a simple business, but it isn't easy, right? And we need to grow our businesses one way or the other if we're going to sustain lifestyle, et cetera, right? And to achieve, we know what our target is. We know why we're doing it. We've got the depth and our clarity of what we're doing, which we talked about earlier. So we've got to choose something that is going to work. How important is it for you to actually choose the path in your real estate business? Whether it's, and we go down to nitty gritty of sphere of influence, who you're going to lead generate with, buyers, sellers, which was mentioned. How important is that, and how do you choose that?
Yeah. So, and look, sometimes like it takes testing things out. It takes testing different niches out. It takes, like I didn't know I was going to be good at this stuff until I discovered I was good at it. Right. So, and then again, we evolve. I mean, there was a point in time where I loved working with buyers my first few years. Then I got to a point where, because I think a lot of us that are really driven, like high Ds, when something stops being challenging, we no longer love it as much, right? So, there's a point in time, my first few years where I love the buy, and I like the listing side too, but I really love the buy side. Then it got to the point where that was no longer challenging. Then I love the rush of, going on a listing appointment with, let's just say, an expire where they're interviewing 3 other agents, and me walking in there and getting that challenge of getting that signed listing agreement, getting the other agents' numbers from the seller where I could call them and tell them, oh, no, you got to cancel. I already got the signed listing agreement. Like, I just love that rush, right? And there was a day where I woke up, years later, where I was like, okay, this is no longer, so some of this is self-discovered over time. I will say the most important element, though, like if we start breaking down, okay, what do agents need? Agents or team leaders or brokerage owners, right? It's all the same crap. is okay, that clarity piece that we talked about. Then from there, you got to identify the best proven plan to get you from where you're at to where you want to go. And you need to invest the time. And a blessing of the industry that we're in is everybody's created. There's somebody that's created the success that you want to create. Like, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Again, we're not Elon Musk trying to do something that's never been done. So we need to identify the right proven plan. So I'm not going to guess. Like, I get people that are like, oh, Josh, like, you're so good at what you do. I'm like, dude, I'm just a really good pirate. Like, I remember my first couple of years, I spent $40,000 on airplane tickets and hotel rooms. Because back then, kind of dating and aging myself, but there's no podcast, there's no YouTube, there's no social media, there's no smartphones. So for me to go learn from the top, and I knew it right out of the gate, I want to be making over $1 million a year in this business. So I started flying all around the country to any realtor team leader that was making over $1 million a year, being a fly in the wall and shadowing them. So to me, it's like, like, I'm just a good pirate, right? Here's where I'm at. Here's where I want to go. Let me identify the best proven plan to get me from where I want to go to where, from where I'm at to where I want to go. No need to reinvent the wheel. But then from there, with that strategy plan, like, it's got to be with precision. Like, you got to know all the way down to the day, like, what you must do to win each and every single day. So then once we have the strategy plan, then it's identifying, okay, what are the skill sets that I must acquire to be able to execute on the strategy plan? Because we're so blessed to be in an industry where it all works, dude. If somebody's like, oh, I tried that, it doesn't work for me. I tried that, it doesn't work for me. It wasn't the thing, it was you, right? It was you. And that's where we come back to that victim mindset earlier.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it all works, man. So, but then, okay, like, open house is a different skill set than me, cold calling. Or if me, I'm doing YouTube videos, or if I'm doing short form content, like, there's different skill sets that we must acquire based on what the strategy plan is. So it's clarity, strategy plan with precision, skill set. Then from there, it becomes a process and system game, right? So then we can operate, do the same things over and over, ensure that we're doing it as effectively and efficiently as possible, and be able to scale and replicate it, and duplicate it. So that's really the key, right? And then from there, I get people that, like, my whole entire career, one of the reasons why I've been able to, create success and growth regardless of the marketplace. Like, my business has grown every single year for 20 years straight, regardless of, even during the great financial crisis, even during and my first mentor gave me the best piece of advice that I've ever been given in real estate. He's like, look, if you want your business to, and this is a dude that had been doing this decades before I got in the game. So he'd been through, like, the 87 crash, 20% interest rates, the .com bubble, 9/11, right? Like, he'd been through the ringer. And he's like, look, man, he goes, if you want your business to continue to grow every single year, regardless of the economy, regardless of the real estate market, he's like, you got to get damn good at acquiring and servicing traditional buyers and sellers, clients, get damn good at acquiring and servicing investors, get damn good at acquiring and servicing distress, like REO short sales, right? He's like, because no matter what's going on with the economy, one of those is going to be strong. But then from there, you got to have the ability to read markets to know how you need to pivot and when you need to pivot. Because I look at this as there's no such thing as a good market or a bad market. The real estate market's always good for somebody. As a real estate professional, it's our job to identify whom the market is good for, pivot, shift, and adapt accordingly. Those that are getting crushed right now are just those that haven't pivoted and changed and adapted. Like, dude, transaction volume, you got 50% less for people that are willing and able to buy and sell in this market. So you got two choices. You can either double down and do twice as much to get the same result, or you can be more strategic and identify those that have the highest probability of needing your services in this market and get more strategic and switch niches. So I'm not a big one that is like, oh, I'm going to attach this specific niche. And I'm not saying that doesn't work. Right now I've always been niched down, but those niches change and I stay fluid based on the market. Like during the great financial crisis, dude, like 90% of my business was short sell and REOs, got in with 35 different banks, asset managers, and then that ended. And then that wasn't part of my business anymore, right? So just, being able to have that adaptability.
That is like such a great lesson that you just gave, right? You niched down, but it changed. It changed as time went on. You had to be ready to do certain things. And that's so very important, especially nowadays. I mean, before we got on, I was on, I do a planning and prep call every Friday with agents in our team. And it's like, okay, so I want to do this, but I don't have time to do this. And I can't see how I can do that. I said, look, let's start with your mindset, right? Let's start with that. Saying you can't is one thing, but when we say we can't, let's talk about what we're saying we can't do, right? So how is that going to affect where you want to go? So maybe instead of saying you can't do it, let's adjust. Let's make adjustments as you move along. And maybe that's not it. But if you're going to do this once in a while or do that once in a while, don't do it, because it's really not concentrating on what you're doing. You're not really getting better at one thing. So it's really important to make sure that you as you move forward, if you decide on something, decide means, you kill off everything else and you decide on one thing and move forward. That's where you go. Nowadays, we're in a tight market. We're in a tough market. I mean, but it's only a tight and a tough market for those that say it is. Just to say exactly what you just said, right? If you look at the statistics, last year, 77% of agents didn't do a deal. Yeah. How crazy is that, right? We did lose some agents. So we're in this market now that some people will call tight and some people will call tough. How would you, as a middle of the road agent, navigate through this market today?
Yeah, so great question. And this is the number one question that I get, because dude, I have friends that have been in this industry at a very high level for 50 plus years. And I even tell you that we've never seen anything like this. Yeah, right. Like if you look at, this is the most unaffordable time to be alive as a U.S. citizen since the inception of the country in 1776. So
that is correct.
Right. So, and then we probably have the biggest real estate market contraction from a transaction volume standpoint that we've seen since the Great Depression. Now, I know that people are like, oh, no, dude, Josh, transaction volume's down to 1995 levels. Okay, in 1995, you had 78 million lesser Americans, and we had a third of the amount of realtors. So
exactly.
This might have
been, and that's important. That's important for people to understand when we're talking these kind of numbers. Go ahead, man.
Yep. So, and when I tell people, like, look, I'm not using any of this as like a fear porn. Like I don't operate in fear, right? Again, I'm a believer. I don't believe in operating in a place of fear. But I want to deal in realities. If somebody's coming to punch me, I want to know that they're coming to punch me so I can just move and get out of the way and avoid getting punched in the face. So I want to deal in realities. Like I'm not going to be naive when I hear these people like, oh, the market isn't going to crash. So I'm like, oh, okay. Right. And I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not going to pretend to, but I'm also not naive enough to I know I can't control the market. I know the signs are there. I know that the average consumer is in a way worse off position than they were before leading into the great financial crisis. If you look at debt to income or debt to savings rates, we've never seen in American history the gap between debt to income or debt to savings be this wide. We've never seen it accelerate at this rate. So the average American is way worse off position than they were before leading into the Great Depression, way worse off position than they were leading into the great financial crisis. So I don't know how this is going to play out. And at the end of the day, it's not something I'm going to stress about. I can't worry about it. Like my focus is to sell real estate, and transactions are always happening no matter what. First step is awareness, right. Then from there, we've got to adjust, like those that are getting crushed right now. I look at, there's two primary reasons why I'm seeing people get crushed is, number one, they're not treating their business as a business. Look, 2012 to 2022, longest bull market in recorded history, longest economic expansion, longest real estate expansion in recorded history. We'll probably never see anything like that again in our lifetimes. Yeah, you could kind of show up, you could wing it, you could kind of be, committed, kind of work hard and go out there and make multiple six figures. Those days are gone, and we'll probably never see those days again. So you've got it. You can't wing it. You got to be a great operator. You got to treat your business as a business. And what do I mean by that? Again, we got clarity on what it is that we want. We've got a strategic plan with precision where we know what we got to do to win every single day. We've acquired the right skill set. We put the right process systems. We're making sure we're tracking our business. That's what I mean by treating your business as a business. Reason number two is they're still playing defense. They're waiting for crap to come to them to fall in their lap. You got to play strategic offense right now. So by strategic, I mean, okay, I'm going to identify, who's buying, who's selling, why they're buying, why they're selling, where they're coming from, where they're going, who has the highest probability of needing my services right now in this market. So I'm going to be very clear in identifying, what that niche is. So an example of this, for the first 18 years of my career, like we never went after divorce as a niche. Something I was never on my radar, never went after them. But then about 3 years ago, so about 2023, we started going after that niche because I'm like, okay, worst financial times that anybody that's alive today has ever experienced. Number one reason for divorce is financial hardship. So divorces must be on the rise. Did my due diligence. I'm like, okay, yep, they're on the rise. Then from there, when you think about the psychology of this, okay, if they're going through a divorce, they own a home. Okay, the probability of them needing to sell as they go through this life transition, life change is very, very high. There's urgency there. So, okay, we started going after divorces, and that became now our number 2 best listing niche, right, for new client acquisition in my business. So then from there, so that's strategic, an example of strategic. Then what do I mean by offense? So then I get people that ask me, oh, so what do you do for divorces, Josh? Do you go meet with attorneys? I'm like, hey, if you want to do that, cool. But that to me, that's defense. Now I'm waiting for an attorney to give me a referral. That's me playing defense, sitting back and waiting. Now I'm going to play offense. I'm going to get their data. I'm going to get their contact information, and I'm doing what is it? I want to make sure my fate is always in my own control. So, I'm going to get their contact information. I'm hitting the phones. We're dialing $500 for the conversations, one listing taken, right? Like we are going after it. Right. So, you got that plan, which is my plan, right? Just to be more strategic and to pivot with the market. The other option, and they're both good. Like I've got one of my good friends who their team is on fire. One of the top teams here in Arizona. And they're growing 100 transactions plus every single year, even this downtime, but they just doubled down. They didn't change their strategy plan. They're still, circle prospecting, open houses, sphere of influence, social media. And they do, 600-700 units a year. So pre 2022 or pre, the transaction volume decline for interest rates went crazy and whatnot. His team minimum was 10 real estate conversations per day, 5 days a week. Everybody on the team had to have, otherwise you're booted off the team. He doubled down. Now it's 20. So everybody must have 20 real estate conversations every single day, Monday through Friday. Otherwise you're booted off of his damn team.
What's a conversation, Joshua? What's a conversation, Josh?
So you real estate related conversation. Somebody's picking up the phone. You have a conversation about real estate.
1 minute, 2 minutes. Is there a time lag to it, or is it just someone said, "Hello, I'm not interested," to hang up?
Yeah, I mean, so everybody has different ways of tracking. So for me, I want to have it where my tracking numbers may not look. And to be honest with you, I haven't asked him that question, so I can't answer that for him, and I don't want to speak for him. Now, for how I track it, now my numbers may not look pretty, but I count a dial as the phone rang. I count a conversation. Somebody picked up that phone. Wrong number, bad number, kid. I don't care. Right? Like I don't want to have gray area where people can make judgments where our tracking is like I want to make sure our tracking is as accurate as possible. So we're tracking, number of reach outs, which means a dial, right? The phone rang, conversation, somebody picked up that phone, appointment set, appointment conductions, clients closings. That's the way that I have found to have the most accurate data where it's not skewed, where we can create predictability.
A great answer, because that's one of the things. I mean, the metrics are really important, and there's a lot of, and we're very much into metrics, and we want to see the agent do certain things. And that's what I was talking about with an agent earlier today, as I mentioned, right? So we've got tough market, tight market, navigation, right? So, is there a secret to today's market, to staying in it and staying on top of it? What's the secret? Is there a secret, or is there just, deciding which way you're going to go with it, what niche you're going to go with?
I don't believe that there's secrets, right? Like I said, we got the two paths, right? You can either identify and pivot to who has the highest probability. It's like, okay, like an example, I'm still running a ton of Facebook ads. Right. Been a big part of my business since 2015. But the difference is where we are targeting the Facebook ads at. Like on a local market, I used to run a ton of local ads, but locals in my market here in Phoenix, Arizona, we went from being the 5th most affordable market in the US to the 5th least affordable, with all this crazy, appreciation. So locals, but incomes haven't went up. So local, the home that we used to be 350s now, 800 or whatever, and incomes haven't went up. So locals are like, dude, screw this. Like, it's not a win for locals. So then I start targeting, okay, I know the top 10 states and the top metros within those states that people are moving to my market. Then from there, I break down, okay, who's this a win for? Okay, so I'm running ads to like San Francisco Bay Area. Average buyer client that relocates here, they're living in a 100-year-old house, 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,300 square foot house that they no longer feel safe in their neighborhood, their area, because of all the crime and whatever else. They're able to sell that, move out here, buy an $800,000 home, brand new, feels like a mansion, gated community, feel safe. To them, they're like, holy shit, this is such a win. I can't believe that this is a possibility. So you can either pivot strategy and be more strategic, which is what I like to do. Because honestly, I know I talk about hard work, but I work hard, but dude, like I want to make the most out of it. I want to get the most juice for the squeeze. Right.
Yes.
Or you can continue doing the same things that you're doing and just double down, right? They both work, but where people are going naive is they're doing the same crap. And definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting the same, expecting a different result, right? Like you got to operate differently. And I don't care which one you're going to go after. The other thing too is just realizing that in business, just like life, there's times of peace, there's times of war. 2012 to 2022 was a decade of peacetime. Now it's wartime. You got to be prepared for war. When people come back, I don't want to work 60 hours a week, 80 hours a week. I know some people might have kids at home and single moms, and every situation is different. So I get that. But let's just say you're a full-time real estate agent. Yeah, you might have to go out there and work 60, 80 hours a week, get through this time. But what's the alternative? Yeah, right? Like the riskiest thing that exists out there is being in corporate world right now. Layoffs are coming, on a massive front. You're just a number. They will cut you like crazy. Right? You're slaving away building something for somebody else. Yeah, right. Like the alternative, and I don't know anybody that's making really good money in the corporate world right now that isn't also having to work 60, 80 hours a week, that isn't, getting beat up and, stressed to the nines. And, so I always look at like, what's the alternative? I get people think about leaving the business. I'm like, dude, like you're in the best space. Your fate's in your own hands, but we gotta deal in realities. We gotta be, consistent, persistent, with it. We got to treat our business as a business and freaking work our ass off. Cause again, we're in times of war. It's like, I told my agents when Jerome Powell comes out and says, okay, guys, we're going to go from quantitative easing to quantitative tightening, but we're going to start with, before we start raising up the Fed rate, we're going to start with backing off mortgage-backed securities. Okay, I know that quantitative tightening always means economic contraction. Quantitative easing always means expansion. Now, I didn't know the severity of this, but we started tracking it, right? But I told all my agents, I'm like, hey, guys, we're going from peace to wartime. If anybody doesn't want to sign up for this, like, okay, leave the team right now. I want to have soldiers that I can go to battle with that are willing to fight this battle. But we just started tracking because we didn't know the right niches yet. So like, okay, like I say, the transaction volume's dissipating 10% month over month. Okay, we knew that we had to increase lead flow and lead fallout 10% month over month just to get the same damn result. And then we were able to identify the pockets where there's big opportunity, like absentee owners and divorces. And now we're starting to see a lot of 30-day plus defaults. So going after pre-foreclosures again, so we're starting to see a lot of those things and hitting those things really hard again. But in the beginning, like we didn't know where the opportunities were going to be at. We just knew that we had to essentially start doubling down.
So basically, as we look at it, the overall thought process, we've had a market contraction, there's less transactions. You mentioned it earlier, and you've had to see where everything was to figure out where everything was going. Where do you see things going yourself over the next 6 to 18 months? Do you see this continuing? I mean, in your market, every market's different. Things are happening differently all over the country. So we can't zero in on a market. My market, we're still having multiple offers. So talk to me about where you see things are going.
Yeah, I see that, it's funny. Like when I deal with, because we deal with a lot of institutions and whatnot, and they always tell me that they always watch Phoenix. And I think there's a reason why Phoenix is always like the sandbox for, always iBuyers, institutions, Zillow, AI. I think there's a reason for that, right? Because it seems like they always tell me of hey, what's going on in Phoenix? Then we know is going to be taking place next 6 to 12 months throughout the rest of the country. And to your point, like real estate's so hyper local. What happens, like even during the great financial crisis, I got a buddy of mine that's a really successful realtor team leader in Alabama. And dude, their market was not, I mean, it's very, it went down, but nothing like our market. It was just a small hit where my market was like a home that was 575 is now selling for 185 at the bottom. Right. And we took 14 years to recover from that. From peak to valley back to recovery. So it took to get back to 2005 prices took till 2019. Right. But yeah, I believe that we are in a long decline cycle. And okay, for the last, 80 years, we could have very low interest rates because each generation, population here in the US and population globally was growing. So when each generation is bigger than the next generation, you have more workers, more productivity, more consumption. Now the whole world is reversed where human beings actually qualify now for the endangered species list. Right. So we're kind of like, so even in the US, like I think we're having like 1.85 kids per couple and replacement rates 2.2 kids per couple. So when you have a global demographic decline, well, you can't get away with cheap money anymore. So I think the era of cheap money is over. And then from there, dude, I don't know a way out of this. I don't know, like other than,
I agree with you.
I think that we'll probably over the next, it'll probably be a slow grind out, but I think in most areas, we'll probably have to see a 40-50% decline in real estate. Cause if you start looking at this, it's not like incomes aren't going to come up, especially with AI and like, dude, incomes aren't going to be increasing, and so how are people going to be able to afford real estate? Like I don't see any other option other than, real estate just coming down massively to create affordability again. I just don't see any way out of this.
Do you see that? You see that happening along with what happened similarly in 08, 09 in that time frame?
Possibly, I don't know. That just things fell off a cliff so fast, this time around, it might be something more like 10% depreciation year over year for 5 years straight. while we're experiencing, 10% inflation year over year for the next, 5-10 years straight. I mean, because we have CPI, but what people don't look at is, okay, when you look at just the rate of the federal government deficit spending, that's about 7 to 8% inflationary year over year. And that doesn't get reported on CPI. So when you start looking at that, when you got, our dollar value going down because of inflation. So if we got real estate coming down 10%, inflation going up 5%, that really means that real estate's going down 15% year over year. So yeah, I don't know how it's going to play out. Whether it's going to be quick or if it's going to be a slow grind out. My market is, I mean, we have certain pockets that are coming down really, that are like, we're already in a crash in some of our zip codes because the crash is correction beyond 20%. Right. So we already have a lot of areas in my market that are already technically crash territory, right. And what's really interesting about this time, is okay, the luxury market always kind of led the way in a correction. But now, because we're witnessing before our eyes right now, is just the elimination of the middle class. Because why did the middle class build up? Because of the Industrial Revolution. Well, now we're deindustrializing, with tech revolution, AI revolution. Like, there's no need anymore for the middle class. So we're seeing the haves and the have-nots. So people are either getting way richer or way poor. Right. So like, okay, the only markets that are sustaining and growing in my market are like Paradise Valley, right. Which is the 5th most expensive zip code in the US, right. So, seeing luxury stay strong, but kind of anything in the, upper middle class, lower middle class, like that shit is just, so they always say that history doesn't necessarily repeat itself, but it rhymes. Right. So I don't know. And I don't ever pretend to have a crystal ball. But here's what I'm prepping for. Cause I have found that if you hope for, if you hope for the best, but then prep for the worst, you're good no matter what. So I am prepping for this to be way more severe than the Great Financial Crisis, way more severe than the Great Depression. Do I think it's going to happen? I don't know. Right. But I know if I'm prepared for it, and it doesn't happen, okay, I'm good to go. If I'm prepared for it and it happens and I prepared correctly, okay, I'm still good to go. Right. Right. And the thing that I want everybody to realize too is, like, my best profit years, hands down, was during the Great Financial Crisis, the worst housing market crash in recorded history in the United States. Those were, I was like printing money, dude. Like, it was just crazy. It was insane. Margins were insane. So if you position yourself right, I mean, there's more millionaires and billionaires created in down markets than there are up markets.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, exactly. So I want to shift a little bit. One of the things I just want to say about to finish off this part of the conversation is that I believe that I thought it started, but it didn't. More of market acceptance by the consumer to the interest rate. The 2%, the 3%. I have my own theories on how and why it happened, and you can thank. I think you can thank a little bit of ignorance and hope at the same time from our leaders. And now it's more or less like, okay, we've got to accept what we've got and we've got to work with it rather than hoping or waiting or doing whatever. That could help a lot. Be that as it may, it's theory. So just a couple of quick things, man. I want to go talk a little bit about something really quickly about, we mentioned quickly, and I did, or we're going to say affirmations and talking about mindset and everything else. I know that there's the best in the world in this business. The best coaches in the world. You and I know the one I'm talking about. And we all have things that we wake up every day and we have doubt. We think about different things and we need little things. And one of the things that has helped me, I forget what I call it. It's when someone says something nice about you, remember it, because they're not just saying it, and it will help you grow your business. It'll help you grow as a human being. It's not really, it's just I have it written. I write down different things when people compliment me, because it means a lot, and it makes you realize, for everybody out there that has an issue with self-esteem or has an issue with clarity, they have to understand that, you know what, you're the only one that might think that. So move forward. I just wanted to throw that in a little bit. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. And look, dude, I mean, self-doubt is normal. We all have it. I go through it. I have fear. I have, self-doubt, whatever. And I think that's normal, and it's probably healthy. There's probably, I'm not a psychologist, psychiatrist. I don't know the brain inside and out, but I'm sure there's an element of, how it can protect us by having that self-doubt and whatever. But just understand that, man, that we all go through it. We all have insecurities. Like I said earlier, like it's so easy, especially today with social media, to go out there and think, oh, these people at work have the perfect life. And, it's just like an example. Like I saw a meme one time that I loved that was like, my wish for you is that someday your life actually become as great as you make it look on Facebook. It's like, okay, like I'm never going to post the fight I just had with my wife on Facebook, but we might post the vacation or the date, the date night. Yeah. Right. Like, dude, everybody goes through shit. We all have insecurities. We all have self-doubts. Like you look at, okay, the most beautiful lady in the world or the most good looking guy in the world, they look in the mirror and they see flaws. Right? Like, dude, everybody's shit stinks. Right. So I look at this I'm sure Elon Musk has doubts, right? Like everybody has, so I don't necessarily look at it as a negative. It's just, hey, yeah, I'm feeling insecure right now. Yeah, I have these doubts right now. Yeah, I'm feeling down right now. Yeah, but I'm going to push through and get my work done regardless, because I know why I'm doing it and what I want to go out there and create. And again, for me, it's not, I think that one of the negatives that people do is they set, goals with finish lines and like to me, like this is just a personal race where I'm just trying to become the best version of myself. Now I've identified what that looks like and what I want to see happen to become the best version of myself. But like, I'm not competing against others, right. And do I have doubts about that? Yeah, but I'm going to push through no matter what and see what I can create and give it my all.
Hey man, thank you for that. I really appreciate everything we talked about today. You alluded to something earlier about the company we both are with, and you made a big change over to EXP a little while ago, and it changed how you do things a little bit, and you did it for a lot of reasons. I've talked myself on this broadcast many times about the old style brokerages. I like to call them now legacy brokerages. I kind of think that more or less that there's really a place for everybody where everybody needs to go. You made this move, and this is not an EXP broadcast. And thank God no one's ever accused me of that. But I do have a lot of people on from our great company because I know they're the best of the best. And that's, you're here. You were the best of the best before you went there, and you're the best of the best now. Talk to me about what that has allowed you to do and what you're doing. Are you doing anything differently? And how are you helping more people because of it?
Yeah, to be honest with you, because even though, I started building a team and got involved in the franchising side of things, I've always looked at myself as a realtor. Yeah, right. And my whole entire career, I just got sick of like the realtor never winning. And it's never set well, even like when we were doing the franchise, okay, we get these franchise, brokers, making an insane amount of money, but their agents are always still struggling. And it just never set right with me. I just got so tired of it. And I don't say this to brag. It's actually really sad, but it's like, okay, I've, sold 7,000 homes, got all these awards, got all these accolades. They're sitting in my garage collecting dust. I can't cash them in the bank. I can't do it, right? Like, and I'm just full transparency to everybody, because I try to be an open book of, look, I've been stupid with my money over the years. I should have lived below my means, buy a bunch of real estate, but I didn't, and then I go out there and I'm investing in other businesses, like pretty much every business I've invested in outside of real estate has failed and flopped. And, so I'm like, man, like, and that was a good lesson of, okay, I got to focus on what I'm good at, what I know, and stay in my lane, with that. But what I love about this model is it's the only everyone wins model I've ever seen, and I know there's competitors, there's copycatters out there, but when we start really breaking those down, because when I made the move to EXP, dude, I didn't care. I didn't care if it was real EXP. Like I didn't, to me, it was just, what's the best vehicle? And, at least for me, EXP was hands down the best vehicle. And not just for me, but what I love about it is, I'm able to go out there and help agents not just grow and expand their business, but truly build an exit strategy, truly build, I had a friend of mine tell me the other day, who's been doing this for like 30 years. He goes, Josh, I've never been to one real estate agent's retirement parties, but I've been to a lot of funerals. And there's a saying out there that real estate agents don't retire, they expire. And what I love about this model, man, is, we get to become owners in the company. We get stock awards for what we're already doing. Like I again, this depresses me, but like if I would have been at EXP from day one of my career, dude, I'd have like close to $100 million in stock right now. Right. Like it's just insane, but then, being able to, passively build the rev share, and I know people are like, oh, I don't want to recruit. Like I got a good buddy of mine I was talking to the other day. He's like, Josh, I've been at EXP for 5 years. Now he's just focused on production. That's his main focus. Like he goes, just through accident. Yeah. He's like, just through accident, I've had 18 people over the last 5 years that have reached out to me saying, hey, I'm unhappy at my brokerage. I see your top producer. You're at EXP. You happy? Yeah, dude, this place is awesome. It's amazing. Come over, join us. So that's turned into like, I don't know, almost 300 down his downline, where he's like, I haven't made less than 6 figures every single year for my downline, right? And that's not something that's going after it like maybe I am, right? But just I love the ability of, like, I always ask my agents, I'm like, hey, like, because we are in a business where it's ups and downs, it's a roller coaster, it's feast and famine, where I'm like, hey, like, what if when you had that month where you didn't close a deal, like, what if your fixed bills were covered? Like your mortgage payment, your car payment, your insurance, your food, like, how would that feel? Oh, that'd feel amazing. Okay, cool. And this is like, it's the only vehicle I've ever seen that allows us to go out there and do that. And yeah, we got, again, copycatters, but it's not in the same way in that, like over here, like when I was looking at Real as an example, they tell me that, okay, you can't offer your coaching. You can't support your agents. Like, you can bring them in, but you either offer your coaching to the whole company, you can't offer it to anybody. So then I'm like, okay, well, I have something that can really support our agents, help them grow and expand, but you're telling me I can't give that to them? Like, to me, there's some things there that, and it's a great company. I've got lots of great friends there. So, but to me, there's a lot of reasons why EXP was the best, because I'm able to, coach, support, pour into my people, help them not just create big success in the production side, but then create a retirement plan and an exit strategy. And, that can be life-changing for those that want to.
Right. Hey, man, I want to thank you so much for you being who you are, being on this broadcast today. It really means a lot to me. And I have 2 things left. One is the question I ask that is just really important to me. How can I help you grow your business?
Yeah, man. So, for me, it's twofold, right? Like, what my vision is and what I'm focused on. So, big thing is awareness. So if you know any, because I've got my podcast, if you know any great guests that you think would be great recommendations, to have on the podcast, now the cool thing about EXP is we have co-sponsorship available. So if there's anybody that you think that we could tag team together, love to do that. That's,
you too.
Those are the big 2 things. Like, look, I'm just trying to, because I'm using for me personally. I know 88% of those that come to EXP don't care about the rev share. They're fully here to focus on production. EXP does the best job of any brokerage in the world about helping production. We outsell everybody hands down in the US, top producing individual agents, top producing team leaders, but I'm treating it like a brokerage inside of a brokerage, right? So I just want to, grow and support and coach as many as I can. So you have co-sponsorship opportunities, but then also, want to go out there and continue building the podcast, create awareness. So if you have anybody that you think would be a great fit, let me know.
Awesome. Hi, man. So one last thing. I want to thank you so much. The hat's coming your way. You're gonna get one of the special gray ones. You've already got a blue one, I believe. Yep. But anyway, man, thank you so much. God bless you. Next week, everybody, we've got a friend of mine, a coworker of mine, a co-coach of mine, co-mentor, Eric Eckhart, coming on. We're going to talk about a lot of different things. We're going to talk about getting right down and dirty to scripts and dialogues and how you can get started and really be a badass. And it's going to be July 4th. Independence Day. So I want you all to declare your independence and your problems with your scripts and shit like that. We're going to have such a great time. Joshua, thank you so much. Stay on for a minute as we go out. Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend. Nelson, hit it.